Okay, so where we left things off yesterday, we started adding some of these images in, and we started getting them connected to our products. I've already gone and added more images so that I can test with that. Um, so the next thing I want to do is go back to our admin controller. The last thing we did yesterday was add this populate photo drop-down method. That's what I'm going to use to populate the photos that show up in the drop-down so you can select which photo goes with each product. So, and that saves it to view bag photo ID. There's a little bit of magic in Razor that whenever you have a drop-down, that's where it will go look for it will go look in view bag for the drop-down items, and specifically it'll look in the view bag for that ID that's the same as the name of the field. So the name of the field is going to be photo ID because that's what I've called the property on the model of the product class. So it's going to look under photo ID for the list of drop-downs. So I need to call that because I haven't called that anywhere. And remember, this is asynchronous, so I'm going to need to say await when I call it. So going up to the crate, I need to hook it up in here first. So I'm going to say await, populate dropdown, and I'm also, and I have to make that async task. And same thing here. I'm going to make this async task. And I'm going to tell it to populate dropdown. I do want to convert this one real quick over to async as well. Okay, so in both the create case as well as the edit case, I need to populate that dropdown. I may also need to do it anytime you submit an edit. So if what you submit isn't valid, you haven't filled out all the fields, I also need to populate that dropdown. So that would be in this case where the model is not valid. Either of these two cases, the last thing to do is redirect, so I don't need to worry about those. But here I need to populate that dropdown should we need to redisplay the view. Okay. So those are the three places that you're going to see that call. So the create, both of the get versions, create and edit, and well as if you have a post version for either of those, you want to make sure you put it there. Okay, so that has given us the options that we need for the dropdown. I need to actually put the dropdown in the view. So I'm going to go over to admin edit. Okay, at the end of this, we're going to add another field. I'm going to duplicate the field above. Label for will change to .photo ID. Change that to photo ID. I'm going to change the validation message. Now here, I don't want to have text box for because I want the user to get a drop-down list to enter that. So I'm going to say .drop-down list 4. Okay. So that will give me a drop-down list instead of that text box. Now, one thing we'll see, there's a red underline on that second parameter because the parameter list for drop-down list is different. So if I go drop-down list 4, what do I need to pass it? Well, I need to pass it the expression, which is that field, and I need to give it, it wants the select list, and then it wants the HTML drop-down attributes. I'm actually going to put in null here, which is going to cause it to look into ViewBag. I could specify the options there, but for this particular case, I'm going to say null, and that's going to pick it up from ViewBag. Oh, and I need to put it on drop-down list 4. There we go. Save that. Let's take a look at it. Okay, I need to go to the admin page. Okay, it's going to require me to log in. Now, if I go to, say, Kayak, Well, here's an interesting question. So it says the view data item that has the key photo ID is of the type generic list. Oh, right. So in order for me to actually display that dropdown, I do have to change the type. So it's expecting it as an interval of select list items. The way I fix that, I'm going to go back to this method because there's one more thing I have to do. So rather than putting this directly in ViewBag there, I need to do one step in between. So first, this is going to give me a list of photos. So here are my photos. Okay. Well, as you saw, it needs an IEnumerable of select list item. So I need to take that list and turn it into a different kind of list. And this is the kind of list that we have to use anytime we want to show something in a dropdown. So the first option first argument this takes, I need to create a new select list. Give it the list of things that I want to be in that dropdown. The next thing it needs, with the list. The next thing it needs is the name of the property that it's going to use as the value, or sorry, the name of the, where is it? The name of the, yes, it's going to use as a value. So in that case, it's going to be photo ID. Okay, and just to refresh on where that's coming from, we've got this photo model class. So this is the value that we want the dropdowns to select, and here is the value that we want it to show. So I'm going to say photo ID as the value, image name as the text. So this is going to be photo ID, comma, image name. Okay, that's what I need to fix on that front. So if we rerun it, let's see, that should work now. Let me just refresh the page. There we go. So now what we have, you can see there's a drop-down list for what's there. Now one problem that you see, I've already got, it's already selecting the first item in the drop-down. The other problem that you still see is that it's not sorting it alphabetically, right? It's sorting it right now, it's sorting by the ID of that photo. So I'd like to fix those two things. So going back to here, right? So, or getting it to sort by the name is relatively simple. I just need to add in an order by clause. Dot order by, and we're going to tell it to order by the image name. So that'll give a more sensible ordering to there. The other thing I want to do is have it not select the first option. So that, the way to do that is, unfortunately, it's a little bit hidden. So it's a thing that you have to kind of remember where it is. So in drop-down list 4, again, there's a bunch of overloads for drop-down list 4. But if I look at several of them, there's a few of them that takes what's called the option label. Okay, the option label is maybe a misnomer. What that is the text that it'll show when you don't have anything selected. So that's what we need to specify. And I can see that there's a version of that that takes, okay, here's the property I want to show the dropdown for, there's the option label, and there's the HTML attributes. So I can actually just put that in between here and say, please select an image. Okay, so that's the text that's going to show if there isn't anything selected. Now, what am I seeing here? Can it convert string to, oh, am I looking at the wrong one? Drop down, oh, a new list for, I want to be looking at this one, right? So I still need that null there. So you say null, because those are my options that I want it to show, which again is coming from ViewBag. There's the option I want to show if it's not selected, and then HTML attributes. So let's run that. So there we go. So if I get into any of these items, I don't have an image selected yet. It won't have it selected, and it'll be ordered by the name. So for life jacket, I'm going to pick jacket A and hit save. For kayak, let's go and pick kayak A, or kayak A, save that. Now if I go back to the home page, something's not right. So I may have missed a step. Okay, correct. So it didn't save. Because what I forgot to do is I forgot to go to the admin controller and save that property. So here I need to say db entry.photoid is equal to product.photoid. There we go. I forgot to add that to the edit. So let's try this one more time. So if I say kayak A, save, let's just make sure that actually saved. There, it did that time. Life jacket, I'm going to pick jacket A. There we go. There we go. So now you can see that kayak and life jacket have those photos that I picked. If I go through, maybe put a few more in there. So bling bling king, corner flags, and human chessboard, because those are on the first page. So here we go. This would be king, human chessboard, board A, and corner flags was the other thing on the first page. Okay, there we go. There we go. So now we have images for all of the products on the first page. So that's a good start. That's a good start. That allows me to have one image per product. Okay, and the big key there is I'm using that drop-down list to select the images that we've already uploaded through that Photos controller. The advantage of using a Photos controller that way, having that be a separate table, one of those advantages is now any feature in my application that I want to have images that I upload, I can upload them to photo, link them up via a photo ID like that. So that is a lot more general purpose than necessarily just creating a photo for every, because you could create the upload functionality for every different type of thing you want to upload, and that can work, and sometimes there's some benefit to that, because it does make it easier to categorize what kind of images they are if you're uploading them to different tables. But in this case, this allows me to now use those photos anywhere on the website that I need to. Now, okay, so our goal now is we want to add more than one photo for each product. This is kind of, you can see diagram of what our structure looks like now. We have the photos table, we have the products table, so it's set up in such a way that there's a one-to-many relationship between the photos and the products. Several products can have the same photo, but every product only has one photo. So if I want to add more than one photo and kind of keep this structure alive where I have the admin controller edits products, the photo controller edits photos, what I need to do is put in a little bridge table between these two things. Okay, so that's going to look a bit like this. So the product is still going to have the product ID, but I'm going to remove that photo ID. The photo table is going to stay just as it is. What we're putting in between here is this product photo table. Okay, this product photo table is going to join and keep track of which product, what photos, and which products go together. Okay, so to make this happen, the first thing I need to do is add that table. So I'm going to go down to my database project, I'm going to add a new table. I'm going to call this product photos. Okay, so product photos is there. And now I need to change what's in here. So I'm going to say product ID int photo ID int, and both of these cannot be null because we need to have a mapping between those two. Now, as you may have assumed already, because this is a bridge table, I'm going to do the common thing of making it such that it's I'm going to use a composite key here as the primary key. Okay, so that's the whole structure for that table. Okay. Oh, I do need to add my foreign keys. So let me do that real quick. So foreign key, product ID, references, my product there we go. And I need to do a similar thing with my photo ID. Oh, I'm missing a comma up here. That's why it's complaining at me. Okay. And this should be photos. Okay, so a foreign key back to the products table as well as a foreign key back to the photos table. Now, one interesting note on here for foreign keys wise, again, remember kind of typically when we try to delete a table, if we have this now, there's foreign keys back to this product photos table now has a foreign key back to the photos table, back to the products table. So if I tried to delete a product or try to delete a photo now, it'll give me an error for any product photos that are linked to it. So a common thing I want to do is say on cascade delete in the structure. What this allows the system to, oh no, on delete cascade. I've got those words in the wrong order. On delete cascade. What this allows the system to do, so say you delete a photo or a product, it will then go delete all the linked product photo entries as well automatically. So this can be helpful for bridge tables like this, so you don't have to manually figure out which items to delete. The database will go ahead and take care of deleting those dependent entries for you. This is a little bit dangerous because it does mean that you don't get a warning when that happens, but for this table that's acceptable. Okay. I need to publish that out. Okay, that was successful. All right, now that I have the products photo table created, I need to create a model for it. So I'm going to add a new class. This is going to be product photo. Okay. So public int product ID. I need these to be required. I'm making them nullable simply because that's going to make it easier to hook them up to the UI in a bit and to deal with when the user doesn't select a value. But I also need to tell it that these are both keys, and I need to tell it what column they are. So this is column. Oop, that was not the option I wanted to pick. I'm going to say using. There we go. So using order is equal to 0, since that is the first column, and order is equal to 1. So remember, anytime I have a composite key, I need to specify both key and column. Okay, so now that I've done that, this class is basically ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and right click here, say remove and sort usings. That will remove any extraneous usings from the top. Okay. So I also need to hook it up to the database. So in here, I'm going to add public virtual DB set, and this is going to be my product photos. Okay. There we go. So close all that down. Okay, so we've added it into the database. I have a model for it. So the next thing I can do now is start to use that in my editor. Now, one thing I need to remember to do, which I haven't done yet, from the product table, I need to remember to remove the photo ID. And I also need to remember to remove that from the database itself. So I'm going to go back to the database. Okay, and I'm going to remove the photo ID column. Now, I also need to remove that foreign key. Okay, so now I'm going to publish it. Now, when I publish it, I'm going to see something interesting happen. You may have seen it before, but I want to refresh on this. So I generate the script, all fine and good. If I hit execute on this, it gives me an error here. Now, the reason it's giving me an error is there's a potential for data loss. In fact, I know that there's going to be data loss because I'm removing the photo ID column, right? So if I double click on this error, it will take me to this line. You'll notice the comment above. It says the column photo ID is being dropped. Data loss could occur. Well, it definitely will because I'm going to lose anything that is in the photo ID column currently. But I know I need to make this change, so all I need to do is just comment out that error, that warning, and it will go ahead and let the script proceed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and comment that out, hit execute on it. It's now run it, so that column has been dropped, and we have the product photos table instead to store that data. Okay, now how do I link? How do I get between my products, my photos, and my product photos now that I have this linkage? Okay. Now, one way I could do this, one way I can solve this problem now to show all those photos is I can use a join. Okay. So let's see what that might look like. So if I go back to the product controller, well, actually, one thing I may want to do, well, I don't have any data in the product photos table yet, and my editor isn't hooked up yet. So I do need to fix that first. Admin controller. So when we edit those photos now, you'll notice, hey, that's gone. It's complaining about that. Let me comment that out for a moment. let me also go into the edit view and comment out this section because that is no longer there. Okay, so that'll be enough to, because I don't have that photo ID column in there, that'll be enough to mostly get it up and running, with the minor exception that I need to change here. Yeah, so here it's still assuming that there's a photo ID column on the product, so I need to comment that out for now as well. All right, so now that we've made those changes, it should be stable. And again, all of those changes we just had to do because we removed the photo ID column from the products table. Okay, so right now we don't have any product, we don't have any images anymore, but at least it's running. What I want to do, and I'm going to do this first through adding the data directly to the database, and then we'll come back and fix the edit here. Since I want to really focus and get that in first. So as far as the database is concerned, I can run it and see what's there. I want to say select star from product photos. Okay, so we can see right now that there's nothing in product photos. So I'm going to go ahead and add, insert some rows into product photos. So insert product photos. It's giving me an error right now because it isn't aware that that table exists. And the way to get that error to go away, let me just save the script. If I close Management Studio and come back, the syntax highlighting will be working. Connect, connect, there we go. So I need to insert some rows into product photos. Execute that real quick. There we go. So I can see what IDs I want. So say for product photos, I want the kayak, which is ID 1, product ID 1, to be linked to kayak A, which is image 8. I also want product 1 linked to image 9. I also want to hook up some images for the Bling Bling King, which I know is the first item that shows up actually in the search results. So that's product ID 10 for me. Maybe something different for you. Where is the king? Okay, so the king for me is going to be image 1. And I also want another image for that. So that's also going to be image 3. So I'm linking up 2 images, images 1 and 3, to the Bling Bling King, and I'm linking images 8 and 9 to the kayak. Okay, so I'm going to hit execute. All right, so what I see now is that I've got those 4 rows into product photos. Okay, so that's enough to have some data in there to know which images go with which, and we can test it from there. So I want to go back to here. Now, one option for me to bring in, potentially, to bring in those product images is that I could do a join. That'd be one option. I could do a join, and that would bring in the product images that I need. Okay. I have another option which I can use, and that other option is to use a navigation property, which we haven't really seen yet. The way that that's basically going to work, let's look at the UML. I'm going to add that to the UML. So the way that that's going to work, so products are linked to more than one product photo. Okay, so in here I'll have a property. I'm going to call it photos, and this will be of type iCollection product photo. Okay, so every product is linked to more than one photo. Similarly, down here, I may want to see what photos are linked to what products. So I might have products here, and I'd say this would be iCollection product photos. So an iCollection, it's basically allows it to be, hey, here I've got kind of a list, or something behaves like a list. Both arrays and lists actually implement this iCollection interface. But it allows two things. One thing to know, IEnumerable only allows me to iterate over the list, but not add and remove things. iCollection does allow me to actually modify the list. So that's why we want it to be that. Okay. So that's the general recommended class that you want to use anytime you're adding a navigation property where the other side has more than one option. So again, photos are linked to more than one product. Products are linked to more than one photo. So that's what that's going to look like. In this side here, I also want to add a navigation property to both of the others. But remember, a product photo is only linked to one product and only linked to one photo. So that's going to look a little bit different. So I'm going to say product colon product, and here I'm going to say photo. Okay. So the product photo is linked to one product, linked to one photo. You'll notice that these are type product and type photo. Okay. So let's go add those to the actual classes. Okay. So those are navigation properties I need. I'm going to go start with product. I'm going to say public virtual. Now, any navigation property we add, we want to make sure we mark it virtual, and that will enable what we call lazy loading, because there's some maybe call it magic that Entity Framework does, in the sense that it'll kind of create subclasses of our model classes, and that's why it needs to be called, that's what it needs to be virtual, is because it's creating these subclasses. So product photo, product photos, we're going to say get and set. Okay, so that's all I need there. Actually, this I wanted to call photos. Okay, and you'll notice specifically these are product photos. They're not directly going to the photos table, right? So I need to go over to the photo as well. So these are the products that it's linked to. Okay. So now we know what products each photo is linked to, and we can traverse that easily. We also know what photos are linked to each product. I want to now go to the product photo table, and we're going to add the navigation properties that we need there. So public virtual photo product get set public virtual photo there we go. So you'll see basically what happens anytime we have a foreign key, relationship between two things, two tables, we'll want to have a navigation properties on both side of that foreign key. So for product, there's an iCollection here, right? Because there are many photos for a product, but here it's a single way. It's a single product. So the thing to remember there, so the side that has the foreign key belongs to just one thing of the other. So whichever side has the foreign key, that's where you'll have the single. Whichever side doesn't have the foreign key, that's where you'll have this, which is a little bit of counterintuitive because you say one to many. Well, okay, let's look at this. Well, the collection has this side is the side that's the one. So the one is the side that has the collection. The many side is the side that has the single item from the other side. So that may seem a little bit backwards, but it does kind of make sense in the sense you think, okay, the product is linked to many photos, and the product photo is linked to one product. Okay, so we've got those set up. What I want to do now, now that we have that, the nice thing here is I really actually don't necessarily have to make a change to here. Now I'll come back to here, and there's a change I do want to make, but I don't actually have to change anything on this side. Okay, I don't actually have to change anything to how this product controller works. I'll just magically get the photos if I set up these navigation properties. Okay, so I'm going to go now back to the product summary view. And you'll remember we had up here, we had our photos were being displayed. Okay, so I need to change this now to photos does not equal null. So we do have a list of photos, and I also want to know that I have at least one photo. So model.photos.any. So if there are any photos, then we'll show all of them. Okay. So I'm going to say for each our photo or item in model.photos. So if for each photo that goes with a product, I'm going to go loop through it. Now the thing I need to remember here, item. This is the photo ID. There we go. So I'm going to show the photo ID for each of those there. Okay, save that. Let's refresh. Oh, I do need to execute, not just refresh. Invalid object name DB. Oh, well, here's an interesting issue. So it's looking for a table, and I know this because it starts with DBO. DBO is that SQL thing. I notice that this is not the right name. So it says product photos, and the reason that this is not the right name is there's a little E here, right? Remember when I called the table, I called it product photos, no E. So remember in Entity Framework, it's automatically going to try and guess what the plural form of a model is. In this case, it's guessed incorrectly. So I need to fix that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the product photos model. Okay, notice I haven't specified the name of the table here. I need to go do that because it's guessed it incorrectly. So here I'm going to tell it that it is the product photos table, no E. Okay. So if I run this now, that should fix the problem. There it goes. So now it's able to fix it and find it. So you'll notice so far what I have is I have them just stacked. So if there are multiple images, I just have them stacked like so. Okay. So what I want to actually do is turn that into a carousel so it kind of slides left and right and shows me some of those photos. Okay. So let's go through how to do that. Okay. I'm going to use a Bootstrap Carousel for that. And the basic code for that looks a bit like this. Okay. Or if I want, and that's without the buttons on it. If I want the buttons, then it would look like this. I'm going to start it here without the any sort of navigation controls. Okay. So I'm going to copy that. We're going to go back to this product summary view. And what I want to change is I want to kind of refactor how this is generating those product images to utilize that. Okay. So first thing I need up at the top, notice that there is an ID there. Obviously that ID won't work because it would be the same for every product on the page. I'm going to cut that out for now. Okay, so I have a carousel ID, I have class carousel, class slide, carousel inner, carousel item. So this is marked active, which means this is going to be that first image that shows. Okay, so let's say I were to, just as a first cut, let's say I were to hard code the path to that image, right? So let's say I grab this. Well, this would need to be model.photos 0. I'm going to move this around a little bit so it fits better on one line. No alt. I need to use element at, since it's not actually a list. Element at 0. There. Okay. So let's say I utilize that to show each of these images. I'm going to comment out my for loop just a minute so we can see what this looks like. Now, you'll remember there's a little bit of a problem here, right? I only have 2 images, right? And this is going to assume that I have 3, right? So if I go back to the browser and refresh this now, it's going to give me an error in the sense that, well, I don't have 2 images, okay? Let's do a quick change here. I know I've got 2 images, so let's just see what that would look like. Okay. Now one thing I'll notice here immediately, it's not sliding to the left, right, or the right as it starts. Okay. So what do I need to do to fix that? Okay. Let's go back and just check the code, make sure that the code we're generating is what we expect. Okay, so I can look in here, I can see that the first item's there, and I can see the second item's there. So photo ID 1, photo ID 3, so that code, that much of the code is being generated correctly. You'll remember one of the first things I did when I brought this in was I removed that ID. Okay. So what I may need to go back and do is add an ID to this here. So I'm going to say ID. And specifically, I need to give, remember I need to give every carousel on the page, every item on the page a different ID. So because there are more than one product on the page, I need to somehow incorporate the product ID to keep it unique. So I may say product photos at model dot product ID. I need to put a dash in here. There we go. So product photos -1, -2, -3. That will mean that for every one of these I get a different ID. Uppercase D. That's what I'm missing. Okay. So I can now see that this is product photos 10. If I look at this one, I can see that this is product photos 1. Okay, so did a little bit of investigation to see why our carousels were not cycling. As it turns out, what we'd forgotten to do early on in the process, we added the style sheet for Bootstrap, but we never added JavaScript for Bootstrap. So that's what I had to go back and do. So going back to the layout, we were missing the two scripts for Popper and the script for Bootstrap. So adding those two, as you can see, has fixed that problem. That's really all I had to do, is add the JavaScript that's needed for Bootstrap. Okay. So now that we have those operating, what I want to do is go back to the product summary view, and we want to actually make this work with the for loop. Rather than hard coding in how many images there are, and assuming that every product has the same number of photos, I need to use a loop to loop through there. Okay, so that part, well, isn't overall that hard. If I think about it here, I can kind of just put a for each loop around here and say for each bar item in model dot photos, and inside there I just need to put a single slide. Okay. Now here I want to say item that. So you'll notice now this tag, right, isn't all that different from what I had down here, right? So I'm going to remove this. I do want to still apply the class card image top to the carousel itself. Actually, I don't think I need to. So I'm going to apply that. I'm going to use that. So one interesting problem I have here is I have this active class. And the active class really should only be applied to the first item in the slideshow, right? So if I leave it off, let's refresh and see what it looks like here. My slideshow doesn't even appear, right? If I don't have that active class, then I don't get any slides. let's say I apply active to all of them, what you'll see is that the slideshow still doesn't work. At least I get an image, but it doesn't know which one is active anymore. So what I need to do, I need to make sure that I'm only making the first one active. Okay. So the way to do that, we need to change this to some sort of expression. I need to change this to some sort of expression to say I want to only show it write active here if this is the first one, right? So how can I check that this is the first one? With the for each loop, not the easiest thing to do. I could make it work with the for each, but the easiest thing to do is to go back to a regular for loop. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a regular for loop, and that will give me the index that I'm at. So int I is equal to 0, I is less than model dot photos dot count and plus plus I. So this will loop through the photos, but this time rather than looping through them using a for each, I'm looping through them using a for. Okay, so if I have that, I can now say if I is equal to 0, then I want to show the class active. Otherwise, I don't want to give it that class. So if it is the first, I want to use that. Here I also need to go and change this up a bit because now I don't have this item variable. So I'm going to say model photos I. Actually, I need to do element at because this is not a list. Get me out of insert mode. Dot element at. Okay, so I can do it that way if I'm still using an I collection. The other way to get around this, so you don't have to say element at, and you can use the bracket syntax, is if you go back to, let's say I go back to the photo, if I used an I list instead of an I collection, same thing here, I list instead of I collection, then I will get that syntax that I want. So if I want to go to product summary, I can now reference it like so without using that element at method from link. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use iList instead of iCollection. Okay. Both are valid options, but that's one upside of using the iList is it has that index syntax, whereas the indexer, whereas the iCollection does not. Okay. So let's save that. And the big reason, again, I changed this was to get that active only on the first image. Okay. So let's refresh this. What do I have here? Can apply, oh, because I haven't executed it, I just refreshed it. I made a change to the model, but I need to run it again to have that be reflected. There we go. So now it does cycle, and in fact, at this point, it should be able to figure out how many images, it should be able to work based on how many images are there. So to test that, I'm going to go back to my database. I'm going to add some more data. So I want to have one of these images have one image, one of these products have one image, and one of these have three. So I'm going to say for the corner flags, I'm going to give it 3. The human chessboard, I'm going to give it 1. So for me, comment that out, write another insert statement. So I need to insert into here. Again, corner flags needs 3. So corner flags is ID 4. And it has, where are my flags? So flag 2, product photo 2, 4, 4, 4, and 5. Again, these IDs will likely be something different for you, so you'll have to look up those based on how you need them. I'm finding them there. And for my chessboard, that's product 8, and the image ID is 6. Okay, so I've added those now. Here we go. So what we should see, I've got one image here, I've got 2 images for both of those diagonal, I have 3 images here. So you can see it's cycled through and it's gone ahead and figured out it works regardless of how many images are there. Okay, so that's all working on the display side. On the display side, we can now see the images, right? But I don't have a way yet to go through the admin page and assign those images to my products. Okay, so let's walk through that now. Fair forewarning, this does require a bit more code than some of the other things, but I'll try to put it in there and then explain why it is that way. Okay, so going to the admin controller. So the first thing I need to do in the admin controller, I need to actually have this model first. So I'm going to say product. I need to move it to a variable first. And then the thing I need to do is initialize the photos property with a list of photos. So new list, product photo, because initially that will be null. Initially there will be no list there. The other thing I need to do now is I need to go through there and add as many photos as I want the user to be able to enter, as I want the user to be able to select. So in order to allow that, I need to make a loop here. So I'm going to say while photos .count is less product photos. While product photos, while the number of images that I have, while it's less than 3, this will let them have up to 3 images per product. I want to add a new photo to it. So product photos add. I'm going to say new product photo. Okay. So that way we'll keep adding until we get to 3. So there'll be 3 products that they can pick when they create a new. There'll be 3 items that they can pick when they create a new product and add up to 3 photos to it. I need to do a similar thing over on this side. The thing to know though is that there may already be a list there. So I need to say if product.photos is not, if it is null, then I need to go ahead and set it and give it a new list. Okay. If it's not null, whether it is null or is not null, I still need to populate it because there may not be enough items in that list. Okay, so I'm going to do that in the same way I did up here, where I'm going to say while the number of products there is less than 3, keep adding products. So that's going to mean regardless of how many product images are currently there, it will give them the ability to add up to 3. Okay. So those are the two pieces that I need to change here. Okay, there's more I need to change down in this edit method, the post version of the edit method. We'll come back to that in a minute. I want to fix the UI first. So we need to give the user some way to enter this now on the UI. So if I go to admin edit, you'll remember that a bit ago that I commented this section out, right? So now I need to bring it back in. The issue is I need to support more than one photo. Okay, I don't want to just support them entering one photo. I want them to be able to support entering multiple photos. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this, I'm going to create a field set. Sorry, I'm just going to do a div. Or yeah, I'm going to do a field set. So here I'm going to make this a field set. This is going to be class form group. What I'm going to use is a legend. Okay, the reason I'm using a legend is because I want to have 3 different drop-downs here, and I want to use this legend as kind of a label for all 3. Okay, if you use a label only goes with one single input. So I'm going to say legend photos, and then in here I need to give it those drop-down lists. Okay. So I'm going to say, but remember I have more than one. So I'm going to say for each, actually, I need to use a for here. I do need to use a for here. Int I is equal to 0. I is less than model dot photos dot count plus I. Okay. The reason I need to use a for loop here instead of a for each loop is because it's going to affect the actual HTML that it outputs. In the sense it's going to change the name of these drop-down lists, and that's important for it to send the data back to the server. Okay. So in each of these, I want to say this is equal to dot photos, and this is going to be I. Dot photos I dot photo ID. Okay. So when you have child objects like this, this is how you kind of have to structure edits. Is you have to say, do a for loop. Again, it needs to be a for loop instead of for each loop, and then you go through and you use that index in this lambda expression here. Okay. So I can cut this out now. That's what I want it to look like. Alright, so let's take a look at what the UI looks like now that I've made that change. So I'm going to go over to the admin page, and let's start with creating a product. Okay, so if I create a product, what I'm seeing here is it says, well, there's no view data, there's no unenumerable select list item. What it is telling me is that now I have these, now that I have changed the name of the drop-down list, it can't find the options that belong there anymore, right? So remember, it was picking it up as viewbag.photoid because the name of my input, name of my dropdown was photo ID, but that's no longer the case. So it can't find it anymore. Okay, so in order to tell it what list of options to use, I have to now explicitly give it that information. So in order to do that, here I'm going to say viewbag.photoid. Okay, and I need to cast that as a select list. Again, because it's in viewbag, it doesn't know what data type that is. I'm going to break that down to multiple rows simply because that has now gotten lines because that's now gotten pretty long. So that's what that looks like. So I have my lambda expression first, the options, again, the option label, which is that placeholder text, and then what class I want to apply to it. So let me save that, and let's see if that fixed that error. There we go. Okay, so under photos here, and that's that legend that I added, I now have 3 dropdowns, which is great. So I can say, let's create a new ball. Test. It's $3, and it's in the test category, and it's got those tags, and I want to give it images ball A, ball B, and ball C. Okay, let's say hit save now. Okay, now what is it telling me here? Product ID field is required. Well, remember, oh, well, that's a goof on my part. So remember when I set up the model here, let me go to product photo. I made this product ID required, which is where it's giving me an error now. I need to actually, I shouldn't have marked these required in the first place. That's my fault. Let me remove that. Let me go back to the edit. That should fix that problem. But one thing I do need to add is I need to add a hidden field. So HTML dot hidden, because I need it to populate that product ID ideally. Into here. So I'm going to say hidden. I need that to be hidden. I need that to actually be, rather than pulling the product ID that's in here, I do actually want it to pull the product ID from the product itself. So in order to do that, I do need to manually, I need to give it that, oh, no, I need to do it on the other end. So I'm going to say hidden for. And in here, I'm going to give it x arrow x dot photos y dot product ID. So I need a hidden field for the product ID and there. Now notice that there is some duplication here because I have a hidden field up here for the product ID. I'm also adding a product ID for each image. Now remember, that's because that's in my product photos. Okay, so I've added that hidden field there. I do need to fix something that I should have done back here on the controller side, because I do need to initialize that product ID. So here I want to initialize the product ID. Oh, no, I don't, because I don't know the product ID here, but I do know it here. So here, product ID is equal to, this would be product dot product ID. So I'm going to initialize that as such. Okay. All right, so going over to admin create is where I was. So I'll say ball test $3. I want that to be category test category. I'm going to give that some ball, bouncy, ball A, ball B, ball C, hit save. Okay, so now it's created that ball. Okay, and if I look, fortunately, if I look over on editing it, you'll notice that it hasn't, unfortunately, it hasn't saved our photos. So there are some things that I need to do still in order to be able to see the photos that it saved. To save the photos in this edit. So first piece of code that I need to change. I need to go through the photos and work with them. So I want to say go for int I is equal to I is equal to 0, I is less than product dot photos dot count plus I. And I'm going to say for each of those photos, one of the things I need to remember to do is I need to remember to add them to that table. So add them to the product photos table, because that doesn't unfortunately happen automatically. So I need to say db.productphotos.add, add, and we're going to add product photos I to there. Now, one thing I need to remember that these photos need to be connected to the product. And the way I'm going to fix that, the way I'm going to take care of that, is I'm going to say product photos. I'm going to use my navigation property to do that. So dot product is equal to this product object. Okay, it's going to use that navigation property, and what that means is once it it's going to use that navigation property to kind of figure out what ID should go there. So once it inserts the product, it's going to actually figure out what that ID is and then put the product ID in here. And that means I only have to save changes once. If I tried to use the product ID directly here, then I would need to save changes here and then save changes again. But using that navigation property avoids having to save changes twice. Okay. Let me save that. That should be enough. Let's execute here. So I'm going to create another product, call it ball2, test. Price is also $3. Test category, bouncy ball, ball A, ball B, ball C, and hit save. Okay, now let's look at ball 2. Okay, I'm missing something. Let's look at the data just to make sure I'm not crazy here. So I have ball and ball 2, that's 12 and 13. And I have 12 and 13 here. But for whatever reason, okay, so the data is being inserted. So it does know which images go with which, but it isn't showing up on the edit page. Let me check real quick here. So there's ball 1 and ball 2. I think if we wait a second, it should cycle. It did. Didn't cycle on the first one because I was hovering over it. So that worked. It did actually save the data that I created, but when I went to edit it, it didn't work the way I had hoped. So let's look at what's going on here. what's happening with the edit. So let me put a breakpoint in here, and let's see what we get. So I'm going to go hit run with the debugger. I'm going to edit this product, and let's see what happens in photos. So product photos is actually giving me 3 photos. Okay. So I am actually getting 3 photos there. And just to double check, photo ID 12 and 13, 13 and 13, 14 and 13. So the data is actually there. So let's say I want to step through this. So I'm going to say step over. So it didn't go into there because there were already 3 images. That went through. But when I'm generating the view, I'm not actually getting the data that should be there. So there's got to be something on my view side. Drop down list for. Let's just inspect. If I look at this, so none of the items are being marked as selected, because typically there would be an option in here that would be marked selected as far as which option was already selected. Okay, I think what I need to do, and this is just a little bit of a shot in the dark. So what if I do enumerable select this item instead? Does that make any difference? So that doesn't make a difference. So what I may want to do, so one thing that I know about this select list also has a thing that you can put in which will say, hey, which of these items is currently selected? But what I know, but if I have to put that in there, then I have to pick every single item and know what its selected value is. Just check. Option label. If I did that, then I would know that, but I don't really want to use that. No, so that's not the right one. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording here as I kind of try and debug this and come back once it's figured out. Okay, so answer to how to fix that turns out to be I need to keep this as a list. Keep it as a list of photos. I'm going to pass that through to the view bag. I don't want to create the select list yet. So I'm not going to create the select list here. I'm going to actually go to the edit view and I'm going to actually create a select list for each dropdown. Okay, the reason I need to create a select list for each dropdown is this final parameter, this fourth parameter to the select list. I need to say what is the selected item. Okay, so to pick that selected item, I'm going to say model.photosI.photoID. So that's the currently selected photo. That's what solves it. So I create this options variable. I add it into dropdown list 4 as the second option, which means that when I go to edit, it will now give me the images that were already there. So I can go to Bling Bling King. I can see the 2 images that are there. Now, one issue here, though, is I still haven't updated any of the code to save changes when I edit the photos, right? So I still may need to do some work there. Okay, but let's see what it's doing right now. So if I say change this to Cafe, so King and Cafe, and hit save, okay, you'll notice that it hasn't actually saved those changes. So in here, I need to add some additional logic to be able to save those changes. Now, before I do that, I also have an additional problem over on the crate side. Okay, so I'm going to fix that first, and that's going to make it a little bit easier to understand what I have to do to actually edit the what I have to do to edit these things, hopefully. So when I create a new product, remember when I created those other 2 products, I actually always gave them 3 images. So what happens if I want to only give them 1 image, or none? Say I only want to give them 1 image. Notice that it goes in and becomes null. So even if, because the photo ID has to be entered when it goes to the database, right? So when I'm adding these, I'm not checking that there actually is a photo that they've picked, right? So what I need to do is I need to check whether or not they picked a photo. So if product.photoID, or sorry, if product photo, yeah, product dot photos I dot photo ID, if that's not null, so they have picked a photo, then I want to add it. So I don't want to add it if they haven't picked a photo. Okay. Do I add? There we go. Okay, so ball 3. So I'm only going to pick 1 photo. I'm going to hit save here. Chart value null into column photo ID. I think there's one more thing I need to do. I think actually in order for this to work out, if I remember right, I do have to actually remove it from this list of photos. Now, one interesting thing happens if I want to say in this else case, product photos dot remove, I want to remove the index at I. Okay. Well, this gets me into an interesting problem as I'm counting through, right? So If I remove an item, let's say I remove index 1, well, now the second item slides into the third item slides into index 1. So that creates a bit of a problem. So anytime I want to remove, I actually need to iterate over the list backwards. So I'm going to say, as long as it's greater than or equal to 0, and I'm going to start from the count minus 1. So I'm going to start from the count minus 1, go as long as it's 0 or greater, and decrement. So that's how I count backwards. Okay. So let me save that, and let's see what that does. Oh, I do have to run it because I made a change to the controller. Add new product, ball 3, test 3, test category, bouncy. Okay, so hit save now. Yes, okay. So now we can see that my ball 3 has been successfully saved with just one image. Okay, so that part's fixed. Now, what if I want to save this here? I still need to fix that edit. Okay, so to fix the edit, I need to go back over here. And I've got a little bit of a problem. So one thing that happens when I have the edit, well, there already is images there. So if there's, let's say there's only one image, and I'm only changing that one image, okay, fine. Then I just change the photo ID. If there's one image already, I want to add 2 more, I want to get up to 3, then I'm going to need to add additional rows. If it had, say, 3 images, and I want to go down to 1, I need to remove rows. So in this case, all I needed to do was add new rows when I'm creating a new product. But in the case of editing a product, I may need to update rows, delete them, or add them as far as these child elements are concerned. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through for int I is equal to 0, I is less than 3, plus I. Now, specifically, I'm counting up to 3 because I'm limiting the user to have up to 3 images. Okay. Now, I'm using that 3 explicitly because there may be a different number. There may be a different number in the data that comes back from the form than, say, versus what is actually in the database at the moment. Okay, so if db entry dot if photos dot count, if it's greater than I, then I know there is a image there. And if I also know that the user wants to insert an image here, that's going to let me know, okay, this is one I need to update. So this is an update scenario. So here, db entry photos I is equal to dot photo ID is equal to the same thing over on the product side. So that would be update. Okay. If there is is if I'm at the point where I've crossed over now to one of these, so let's say if product count is greater than this one, if there's more photos remaining, there's more photos that the user gave me than what's in the database, now I need to add some rows. Okay, so in this case is where I need to use that code here. So I'm going to say product photos. I forgot that I need to delete all the ones that don't have a product in there. Okay, I'm going to pause the recording at this time because I need to, there's a few changes I need to kind of realign that. Okay, so to end this out, here's kind of the magic code that I ended up having to put in to make the edits work. Yes, there's a fair amount of code there, as I kind of mentioned earlier. I remember there being. So the first step I had to do is from the photos that the user kind of told us to add, I have to first remove the ones where they didn't select a photo. So that's what it's doing here. The next thing I need to do is go through the photos and figure out which ones are new and add those to a list, and then we'll add those all at once. The other thing I need to do is go through similarly, figure out all the ones I need to remove, and then remove those all at once. Okay, so I'll give you a copy of this code because there's a fair amount to it, and I'm just kind of need to walk through it. But that's where it is. I'm going to kind of end this off here. I hope that gives you most of the tools you need for the labs. There may be still some things we need to talk about on Monday, but that should get you started. That should get you going.